the Indian Defence Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has refused to mince her words. She's hit out at Pakistan while speaking with the media in New Delhi today, pinning the blame for the terrorist attacks in Jammu and Kashmir on the terrorist outfit Jaish-e-Mohammed. Ms. Sitharaman said that Pakistan will have to pay for these misadventures. Listen in.
Giving the evidences to Pakistan will have to be a continuous process because it has to be proven over and over and again, as many number of times, that their involvement is there for everybody to see it. And the evidences will only strengthen that argument. So giving that does not deny us our right to respond adequately and at a time which we think fit. Pakistan will pay for this misadventure.
Right, so the Defence Minister of India refusing to mince her words. She's placed the blame squarely on Pakistan for recent terror attacks in Jammu and Kashmir. Before I go to my colleague Ramesh Ramachandran, just a reminder to our viewers, Jammu and Kashmir, an army camp in the city of Jammu was attacked just this Saturday, in which 5 security personnel were killed, 1 civilian killed as well. Right now, as we speak, there is a fierce gun battle underway in Srinagar, where a CRPF camp was targeted by members of another terrorist organization. Once again, Lashkar-e-Toiba has taken responsibility for this latest misadventure. Nirmala Sitharaman now saying that India is not going to sit back. It will make Pakistan pay for these misadventures. Ramesh Ramachandran, WION senior correspondent, joining me on the broadcast from the newsroom for more on that story. Ramesh, we saw, of course, the surgical strikes taking place in 2016 after the Uri attack. And this time, too, it seems like the government has made its stance extremely clear that it's not going to sit back and allow Pakistan to continue with these unprovoked attacks on Indian soil.
Everybody who knows Nirmala Sitharaman would understand that she's not given to rhetorical flourishes, so every word which she utters carries a message of its own. Now, one can interpret her remarks literally and figuratively. Every which way look at it, Pakistan has been put on notice, and India is saying in no uncertain terms that India will respond, will give a befitting reply at the place and time of its choosing, and that this comes barely 2 years, less than almost 18 months after the surgical strike in September 2016, and that cannot be ruled out going forward again. But that said, all responses, all options are on the table. It remains to be seen how India chooses to respond in the months ahead.
Right. And Ramesh, we can't also, of course, look very far away from the fact that the Prime Minister has just returned from a trip to West Asia, where counter-terrorism measures were among the most talked about areas between his counterparts in the 3 countries that he visited in West Asia. It's ironic almost that he's come back to the news of an ongoing terrorist encounter in Jammu and Kashmir, and of course what's happened in Jammu just a few days earlier.
Aisha, in a sense, history is repeating itself. India has been a victim, one of the oldest victims of terrorism, especially cross-border terrorism. But that said, if you look at the recent history of India-Pakistan relations, Aisha, every country of consequence in the region and beyond have seemingly called Pakistan's bluff on the issue of terrorism, Pakistan's complicity and duplicity on the issue of terrorism, be it the US, be it countries of consequence in West Asia, be it the UAE, Saudi Arabia. Everybody has criticized the employment or the use of terror as state policy. Now, Pakistan is increasingly isolated in the region and beyond, and one can only hope that Pakistan draws the right lessons from all of this experience. But that said, if the past is any indicator, Aisha, Pakistan is most unlikely to change its attitude towards terrorism, and it remains to be seen how India and the world at large lean on Pakistan, make it desist from using terror as state policy, and deny safe havens to terrorists and terror groups alike.
Absolutely. And in fact, just a couple of days ago, the Pakistani defense establishment has accused India of jumping the gun by naming Jaish-e-Mohammed as the organization behind the attack on Jammu. Stay with me, Ramesh. Also on the broadcast with us is WION's senior editor, Surya Gangadharan, who's going to give us more perspective. Surya, every time you and I have spoken about these continued provocations by Pakistan. We've also touched upon the fact that India needs to stop relying on Western partners such as the United States to make Pakistan pay heed to the fact that there are, problems with its state policy of promoting terrorism. Do you think that this press conference by Ms. Sitharaman really hits the nail on the head and is perhaps indication of India's new stance on how to tackle Pakistan?
Well, if there is a new stance, we'll have to see how it plays out on the ground, because right now she has said what we've heard from various army officers at various points. So in that sense, how is India going to respond now? That is the question. But when you look at it in a larger perspective, Israel responds to every attack, however minor, on its settlements, on its people, with heavy-handed force. And where has that got Israel so far? It's still more largely isolated. There are enemies like Hezbollah and Hamas and others on their doorstep. It hasn't lessened their hatred of Israel or their willingness to go that extra mile in striking at Israel. So in that sense, are we facing the same situation in vis-a-vis Pakistan? Because at the end of the day, no matter what the cost across the line of control, the Pakistanis continue sending infiltrators across, because at the end of the day, the loss of a terrorist doesn't really matter to the Pakistani military. It's the loss of their own people which matters. So I think in that sense, India will have to kind of recalibrate our strategy and make sure the Pakistani army is the one that gets hurt. Not so much civilians or even these infiltrators and terrorists who are largely proxies of the Pak military.
Absolutely. But do you think, Surya, the fact that this time around we're not just hearing of attacks on security establishments in which India ends up losing security personnel, but there have been attacks on family quarters? This time around what's happened in Jammu, a pregnant woman getting shot in the back, having to go through an emergency operation to deliver her child, a civilian casualty, of course. But the fact that the provocations have now gone beyond just security installations and are striking, the wives and families of the Indian army, does that prove that India has also got its back against the wall in how to deal with Pakistan?
I think these attacks have happened before on the families of army and police personnel. I recall an attack on an armored regiment where some of the family quarters were attacked. So in that sense, one has to hand it to the terrorists because they have done the intelligence well. Clearly, this camp has been under surveillance for some time. They have they've observed where the weak points are. They've monitored the flow of people in and out, and they've struck at the right moment. So there is something that we have to learn from that. When you're in a conflict state where perhaps an attack can happen at any point, you have to be that much more careful about defending your people. Clearly, something went wrong here, and I'm sure at some point the army will come out with details of how the attack happened and what the weak points are. But clearly there was something lacking in our defensive posture there.
Absolutely. General Raj Kadian, a defense expert, joining us on the phone line right now. He should be the best man to answer that question for us. General Kadian, this is again an attack on a security installation in India. Do you think that there are lapses that need to be addressed as well on our side of the border to make sure that such provocations can't become successful repeatedly?
The first point is that they are deliberately targeting security installations so that they get a higher visibility, that they have even attacked the well-protected camp. Second, I don't know whether we are right in only focusing and strengthening the camp. These camps are surrounded by civil areas. It's next to the highway, so there is nothing about the camp layout that is not known to the civil population. Unfortunately, we have gone a step further. We have settled Rohingyas adjacent to the boundary wall of the camp. Not that there is any proof that they were involved, but then we are increasing our own vulnerability by settling close to the army camp people who are foreign origin, whose credentials are not even authenticated. I think that needs to be corrected. But the point remains is that nobody has won a duel by just strengthening your defense. You can't just strengthen your shield and then feel happy. You have to also look at the sword. We had very good defense in Pathankot. There was a 12-feet high wall. What happened? They still came over it. So no matter how much protection you increase, you cannot stop the attacks by the suicide attackers who are prepared to die and are determined to kill. The answer lies in going to the source of these problems. Sitaraman clearly said that Pakistani hand is proved, and she also said that Pakistan will have to pay a price. I hope she walks the talk. The answer lies in tackling the source and not at the target end.
But what does that involve, General Qadian? Can I ask you, when you say you hope that Ms. Sitaraman walks the talk, what are you hopeful of?
I don't know what she has in mind when she says Pakistan will have to pay a price. I think she should be asked this question, but this statement by itself is very encouraging that government is seriously thinking of extracting a price from Pakistan, and price that should be substantial enough so that they get deterred from carrying on with these perfidious activities of ceasefire violations and terror attacks.
As a former member, sir, as a former member of the Indian Armed Forces, as a proud soldier, I'm sure it hurts you to see these, repeated incursions against our security installations. What action, if you had the choice, what action do you think needs to be taken for Pakistan to understand that India is not ready to play ball till the time these provocations stop?
Yeah, there are short of wars. We have options. Army has the means and methods. First of all, why are we so stuck up on the sanctity of the line of control and the ceasefire agreement? When Pakistan continues to violate it at will, we still continue to say that whenever he attacks, we will retaliate. Why should we only retaliate? As it is, Pakistan has accused India of violating the ceasefire. They have said last year alone we violated, I think, 1,300 times. That is their figure. So why are we so stuck that we only gave a response? We should be proactive. In my view, as a military man, you don't have to cross the LOC. We have long-range weapons. We have enough ammunition. We should burn up the entire 740 kilometers of the line of control and continue the heat on Pakistan so that there is a repeat of 2003 when the exchange of artillery fire had gone to an extended for a prolonged time and Pakistan was compelled to seek ceasefire. We should create those conditions again. And either Pakistan then seeks an open war with India, for which we are ready, or then it comes to the table of peace by stopping all these actions.
All right. Ramesh Ramachandran, General Qadian, very clearly for proactive action, saying that it shouldn't always be a reaction from the part of India. But is India in many ways shackled by its good brother image in South Asia, its position as a responsible member in the South Asian region?
Well, actually, just to carry forward the point General Qadian was making, there's no denying that costs need to be imposed on the perpetrators and their backers, supporters in the Pakistani deep state. All diplomatic, political and military options should be exercised and should be on the table going forward as well. But the question to my mind is, what is India's threshold, the red lines? We saw an attack happen in 2008 in Mumbai in which more than 160 people, civilians, lost their lives. We saw an attack in Pathankot in early 2016. We saw the attack in Uri, but that was followed by a surgical strike in September the same year. So what is India's threshold? How many lives is one too many? Remains a question even to this day.
Absolutely. Surya Gangadharan, closing comments from you in light of Ramesh's statement. Considering the frequency and ferocity of these attacks is also constantly changing, do you think that goalpost, that red line is also constantly shifting for India?
No, I think the problem here is that we have to figure out exactly how do you deal with Pakistan. We haven't worked that out as yet. A strike across the LCA, frankly, is fairly simple, and it's really a no. It's a very easy option, a convenient option. You need something far more, something which hurts the Pakistani military, because they are the ones behind this infiltration and behind terror proxies. So unless they hurt, unless they feel that they are losing their men, I think in that sense what General Qadian said was correct. Until the Pakistani army hurts, I don't think you're going to see a cessation of these things or even a reduction of these incidents.
All right. So obviously there is a long battle ahead for India if it is to bring Pakistan to book for these continued provocations. We'll have to leave it at that, gentlemen. Ramesh Ramachandran, Surya Gangadharan, Lieutenant General Raj Qadian, appreciate the three of you joining us this evening.